Hello and welcome into the backfield. I'm your host Connor Schaff, and today I will be going over my Week 7 college football rankings. And you might notice on the screen and maybe from the title of this video that I will not just be giving you my top 25, but my top 50. Now, why will I be doing this? Because I didn't give you my top 25 last week, so we're doubling up this week. We're going top 50 midway through the season. We're going all in, and I will be giving you my top 50. I'll run through my 26 through 50 rankings fairly quickly, just so we can focus on the top 25 a little more. But I wanted to give you guys a little more because I didn't upload last week. I also do want to apologize. I am not in my normal recording place right now, so I don't have a good mic, which means you can hear my computer fan in the background. So I'm going to do my best in editing to try and cover over that, but I apologize if you guys can hear that. I will do my best to make that as not annoying as possible. But with that being said, let's start by getting into our rankings of 46 through 50. Now, obviously, because we have 50 teams being ranked this week, I will not be going through my nearly missed the cut teams as well. I will just be going over my top 50 because that's more than enough teams and already a bit over the top in its own right. But let's start with number 50 with Arkansas. Arkansas is 2-4. You might be like, how on earth is a 2-4 team ranked in my top 50? And well, that's because their losses are actually pretty good losses to have, and they've looked good against good teams. If you take their losses to Tennessee, Ole Miss, and Memphis, they lost by a total of 10 points to 3 top 25 teams. Now, obviously, they got absolutely crushed by Notre Dame, but they have looked okay this year. And honestly, that can't be said for a lot of teams. And I honestly believe in a ranking of who I think would be other teams, I think Arkansas would be a lot of teams behind them. So maybe it's a little controversial to have them in the top 50, but I do. Number 49, I have SMU. SMU, they also have some decent wins on their schedule. They beat Stanford this past week. They have, they don't really have anything special on their resume, to be honest with you, but they have losses to Baylor and to Arizona State, and honestly, I'm kind of just trusting in this team based on how they performed last year. Maybe it's a bit of copium involved here, but I think they're on the outskirt or just inside the top 50. Baylor, we have at 48. Baylor has a win over SMU, hence why they're one spot ahead. Kansas has some okay performances this year. They don't really have any bad losses, and I do think they're a decent team. Arizona at 46. This is really a Big 12 row here. They don't also have really any impressive wins. They do have a win over. Never mind. They have looked okay this year. Their loss is to Iowa State and BYU in double overtime, I want to say. So their losses are really not that bad, but so I'm not really docking them too much for that. I think that they are right around this range. Now we move on to 41 through 45, where we have the 11th ranked out of 11 undefeated teams left in UNLV. That's another reason why I wanted to do this kind of video, is to be able to see where I have every undefeated team still ranked. But I have UNLV at 45. They really have not been great for an undefeated team this year. They only beat Air Force this past week by 3 points. They only beat Miami of Ohio by 3 points. It's just not the most impressive of resumes. So we'll see if they keep winning games, then they will keep going up. But I haven't been super impressed with them so far. Next up, we have Wake Forest. Wake Forest honestly have a underrated resume so far this season. Wake Forest, if I can pull it up, Wake Forest, they eventually will get there. We'll get there soon enough, maybe. This is the problem with using the ESPN app. It is actually such a piece of garbage app. But Yeah, so Wake Forest, they have wins over Virginia Tech. They have a 1-point loss to Georgia Tech in overtime. So it's actually two. So their 1-point loss to Georgia Tech in overtime honestly looks quite good right now. They beat Virginia Tech, who I have as like a top 75 team. They aren't great, but still a decent win. And they also just barely lost to NC State. So really, there isn't a ton to go off of here. It's mainly that they've played Georgia Tech closer than any other team Georgia Tech has played. So you do have to give them credit for that. NC State is honestly also a team that has had a very under-the-radar decent season so far. They have a win over Wake Forest. They have a win over Virginia, which looks like a very good win at this point. And their losses are to Notre Dame and Duke, who are both obviously above them in this ranking. At number 42, I have Boise State. Boise State also, I think, are under the radar a little bit as a team that honestly hasn't been that bad. They played Notre Dame closer than NC State or Arkansas played Notre Dame. And honestly, at points, they looked like they could have gotten into that game a little more. They only lost by 3 touchdowns. And they also, their other loss was obviously a crushing loss to USF, but USF are a team that looks poised to make the college football playoffs at this point. Their wins, they have a win over Appalachian State, which looks decent. They have a win over New Mexico, which looks decent. So nothing too impressive on their resume. But I think that for a team that I thought were going to be a college football playoff team this year as the Group of 5 qualifier, realistically, I don't think they've done too bad. At 41, we have TCU. TCU dropped quite a lot down my rankings after losing to Kansas State, but they still have some okay looks on their resume. Now we move on to 36 through 40. Louisville has a loss to... I'm trying to remember. They lost to Virginia, of course. So they lost to Virginia. They beat Pitt in a close game. Nothing too impressive on their resume, but with one loss, they do still have to be in the top 40. Arizona State, I have here at 39. Arizona State gets crushed by Utah this past week. Realistically, you can't look too much into it because they were without Sam Leavitt, their starting quarterback. You hope he's back this week for the game against Texas Tech, but I don't think they're a top 25 team at the moment, but I also don't think they're too bad of a team. South Carolina, I have here at 38. This and one other SEC team, I have a feeling I might get a bit of hate for how high I have them. But realistically, I don't think South Carolina is a bad team. Really, their season has been defined by whether Lenore Sellers can stay healthy, and when he does, if the team can pull through. I am maybe a little disappointed with how he's performed in his own right, but I definitely think South Carolina is still a decent football team. At 37, we have Iowa. Iowa crushes Wisconsin this past week. Really what's holding them back at this point is their loss to Iowa State, with Iowa State starting to crumble a little bit. Iowa State loses to Colorado this past week, so they cannot move any higher than 36. And here's the other one. Now, without overreacting too much, just hear me out. Florida's losses are to a top 5 Miami team, a top 5 Texas A&M team, a top 20 USF team, and a top 15 LSU team. So their 4 losses are to 4 teams in the top 20, and they have a win over a top 20 Texas team. So they have played 5 teams in the top 20. That's honestly quite an unfair hand to be dealt, to be honest. And I really think that this Florida team is not that bad. I think that they are a decent team that has just had a ridiculous schedule they played. Now we have our next undefeated team. We have Navy. Navy hasn't really played anyone good yet. So I'd really like to, obviously their big test will be when they play Notre Dame. We'll see how they do in that game. I fully expect them to lose that game, but maybe they will shock us and they'll instantly become the favorite to make the college football playoff out of the group of 5. At number 33, we have Maryland. Maryland doesn't really have anything too impressive on their schedule, to be honest, but they're a 4-2 Big Ten team, so they are still hanging in here at 33. Duke we have here at 32. Their losses are to 2 quite good teams in Tulane and Illinois, and the Tulane loss was quite close. So they stay here at 32. They have some decent wins as well over NC State. Virginia, we have here at 31. They obviously have the big win over Florida State. Maybe that win looks a little less impressive now. They also have a win over Louisville, which I think is a little more impressive. I want to say that game was at Louisville too. They obviously have a loss to NC State though, so that's really what's holding them back at this point. Now you have 26 through 30. 30, I have Tulane. Tulane is a 5-1 team with wins over Duke, a win over Northwestern, who's starting to look a little better. So they come in at number 30. Obviously, they got absolutely demolished by Ole Miss earlier in the season, so they're still on the outside looking in. Then at number 29, we have Washington. They're kind of in a similar boat. They have some decent wins, but they have a crushing loss to Ohio State at home. So they are. I really just want to get one game against a good team to prove to me that Washington are decent. At 20, now we have kind of our SEC mid-tier here. So we have 26 through 28. Missouri here at 28. They lose to Alabama this week. Really, they have the same problem as Washington. They just have nothing impressive on their resume. At 27, we have Mississippi State. Mississippi State, their two losses really are not bad. They have a loss to Tennessee in double overtime and a loss to Texas A&M. Two teams that are top 10 caliber teams. And they have some decent wins. A win over Arizona State. They have, I want to say they have one more SEC win, but I can't quite remember. At 26, we have Auburn then. Auburn are a very unlucky team this year. They've kind of been screwed over by refs in two of their games against Oklahoma and against Georgia. But I don't really think you can give the if, buts, or maybes about whether they would have won those games if refereeing decisions went the other way. I do think there is a good chance they would have beat Georgia. But they kind of sit here on the outside looking in. They have a win over Baylor. That's kind of their bigger win at the moment. We really need to see them perform against a better team, though. Now we get into our actual top 25. We're at number 25. We have undefeated BYU. They beat Arizona in double overtime this week. It's just really not that impressive of a performance, to be honest with you. I just haven't been super impressed by this BYU team yet. I really want to see them play a better team to get an idea of how good they are. 24, we have Cincinnati. Cincinnati gets the job done once again this week against UCF. Their one loss is to Nebraska, who we'll talk about in just a moment. And they have wins over Kansas, and honestly, they've just looked quite good this year. At number 23, we have Memphis. Obviously, their big thing that is holding them high is their win over Arkansas, which was a bit of a fortunate win, but they are still undefeated, so they come in here at number 23. At number 22, we have Nebraska, who actually dropped down a little bit in the rankings because they, despite beating Maryland, which is a decent-looking win, their loss to Michigan looks a little worse now after Michigan got crushed by USC. So they come in here at number 22, but I think they are quite a good team this year. Michigan are number 21. They lose to USC in a really crushing defeat this week. They're still holding their head on this Nebraska win here. They've just been a little too spotty this year. You hope that Bryce Underwood will play a little bit better. I think that you lose some motivation through their performance this week, but I think they'll be okay. So now we have 16 through 20. At number 20, we have Utah returning to the top 25. They take down Arizona State in dominant fashion this week. I think the thing is I'm not necessarily that impressed with their win over Arizona State because it was against a backup quarterback. I think what I'm thinking more is that we were probably a little harsh on them, dropping them out of the top 25 in the first place, because it is clear that Texas Tech is a very, very good team. But yeah, I think they're good right around this 20 range right now. Number 19, we have USC moving into the top 25 as well after they beat Michigan this week. I think this is a very good team, but I don't think that they're quite a great team, to be honest. At number 18, we have Illinois. Illinois loses to Ohio State in pretty bad fashion. They just got completely outplayed. But with that being said, everybody's been getting outplayed by Ohio State. They still have a really impressive looking win right now against USC, a win against Duke. So they're in a pretty good spot themselves. At number 17, we have Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt are kind of in this weird territory where they They don't really have anything too impressive on their resume, but they haven't really faulted too much either. They have a loss to Alabama at Alabama, which I don't think you can really be too harsh about. So they come in here at number 17. At number 16, we have Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is undefeated still, but they just haven't really proven themselves against too good of a team. That's really my problem with them at this point, is that they just they don't have a great win at this point. But with that being said, let's move into our top 15. With 15, we have Oregon. Now, I actually have Oregon a little lower than quite a few people have. Most people have Oregon still in their top 10, but really, when I look at Oregon's resume, their wins are over Northwestern. They have a win over... trying to remember who else they have a win over. They obviously have a win over Oklahoma State and Oregon State. Those are two not impressive wins at all. I want to say they have one more okay win that I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but it hasn't been that good from Oregon. Not that it hasn't been that good. They haven't played anybody good. And then they go and lose in Eugene to Indiana, and really the scoreline doesn't indicate how much they got battered in this game. Oh yeah, obviously their other win is over Penn State, which now that Penn State win in double overtime just doesn't look nearly as impressive. At number 14, we have South Florida. South Florida are just continuing to rise up these rankings. Their one loss is to Miami, which honestly, you can't even fault them for. Miami is a top tier team this year, but they have wins over Florida and Boise State, which are both decent wins to have. Then at number 13, we have LSU. LSU is kind of just cruising along right now. They get a win over South Carolina this week. Now I will say this team is actually 5-1, not 4-2. That is a mistake on my part. I must have. And then Notre Dame is also 4-2, not 4-1. But yeah, LSU, they're sitting here at 5-1. They just don't have too much to say about their resume at the moment. Their Clemson win just doesn't look like anything at this point. So I think we really need to see what they do in the future to really see how good this team is. But I still think there are a lot of the same concerns about the offense with Garrett Nussmeier at the helm as there were in previous weeks. At number 12, we have Notre Dame. I think this team is a very good team. I get that they have 2 losses on their schedule, but who the heck cares? Their losses are by a total of 4 points to 2 top 5 teams, and yeah, they crushed NC State this past week. They crushed Arkansas before that. They crushed Boise State before that. They've destroyed every other team that they've played, and yeah, I think this is a very good football team. Then at 11, we have Oklahoma. Obviously, Oklahoma loses this past week. I really think a lot of that just is that John Mateer came back too quickly. Unfortunately for them, they have such a difficult schedule for the rest of the season. I don't know how good this team is going to finish off, but I still think that they are probably top 15 team in the country. Moving on to 6 through 10, Texas moves back into the top 10. I know that they have the loss to Florida, but like you think about it, they have a win over a clearly very good Oklahoma team. They have their loss to Ohio State really helps their resume more than anything. It's a 7-point loss to a team that has quite literally destroyed every single other team they've played. So I think that when you take both of those things into consideration, they are still a top 10 team for me. Ole Miss has actually dropped down my rankings quite a bit from last week. They only beat Washington State by 3 points. It was a really poor performance from them, but at the end of the day, they're still an undefeated SEC team, so they come in at number 9. Tennessee gets the job done in a little bit underwhelming fashion against Arkansas. The offense still looks very good, but the defense, I think, needs some work. But with that being said, I still think this is a very good football team. Georgia comes in at number 7. They also struggle a little bit against Auburn this past week, but they still get the job done. They win the game. They are 5-1, so they're number 7. At number 6, we have Texas Tech. Texas Tech crushes Kansas this week. Really, they're just... I want to move them into the top 5, but I can't quite take that plunge yet. Just because I'm pretty happy with the top 5 teams that I have at the moment. But Texas Tech, I think, is a very, very good football team. And that's moved me right into my top 5. Where at number 5, I have Alabama. I'm just choosing to muster up their loss to Florida State as a complete fluke. I still think this Alabama team is very, very good. They have their win over Georgia. They just beat Missouri. I think this is a very good football team, to be honest. At this point, I think they're going to be just fine. At number 4, we have Indiana. Obviously, Indiana gets the huge win this week against Oregon. The only reason why they're not higher is just because I think that these next 3 teams have just been a bit more consistent across the entirety of the season. But I think Indiana, they have 2 unbelievable looking wins with their win over Oregon and their win over Illinois. So they're still, it's really this top 4 is just miles ahead of everybody else for me at the moment. But Texas A&M comes in at 3. They take down Florida this week. Realistically, this team is just looking really consistent. They have the win over Notre Dame. They have a win over Auburn as well. They're playing really well at the moment, and I think this team is easily the favorite in the SEC. At number 2, we have Miami. Miami doesn't play this week, so they remain at the top here. I actually, if you go back to my Week 5 rankings, had Miami at number 1, but I think this team that I now have at number 1, Ohio State, I think this team is just really, really quite good. Like, they have destroyed every single team they have played since the Texas game. They destroyed Illinois. They destroyed Washington. They destroyed what's the other team that they've played? Can't quite remember off the top of my head, but they've been incredibly good this year, and that is why they come in at my number 1 spot. I don't think that's really too controversial at this point. With that being said, make sure to let me know your thoughts in the comment down below. Let me know what your top 25 is. Let me know where you agree and disagree with all of my rankings. Thank you for sticking around for this bit of a longer video. I hope that giving you my top 50 gave you a little something to think about and to see where my head's kind of at this point in the college football season. But thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, interact with the video in any way you can. It all helps grow the channel. But with that being said, that is it for today. Goodbye.